Rampage. Again, why? Here's a terrible, terrible game. And by terrible, I don't mean that it was not fun. It was fun. It was an arcadey kind of game. You smash up buildings, you eat people. It's great. You're monsters. You know, like Godzilla kind of stuff. There's no plot. What is the plot? So again, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson comes in. He's like, I'll do a movie based on a video game. Woohoo! And the rest is history. Apparently the rest is a $428 million history. They're never getting a dime from me. I will watch that on YouTube when it's as free as the Super Mario Brothers movie, and not a minute sooner.
Defeated by delicious fruit pie.
Okay, so welcome everybody officially to this week. This is episode 155, where we're talking about video games from movies from video games. Obviously, that's a thing. I actually just found out that that specific thing is a thing on Wikipedia. It's like a subcategory. So we'll get into that in a little bit. We're going to talk about, first of all, movies that have been made from video games. Then we're going to talk about the vast library of video games that have been made from movies. We'll talk briefly about how there are, in fact, video games that are made from movies that were made from video games. There's like 3. And then we'll wrap it up with your questions and comments. And at the end, and if I am still able to live after going through such atrocities, then we'll be on for an episode 156. But in the meantime, this is Eric Allen, or NEDTJ, on DBDFP. A lot of letters. You don't know what they mean. That's okay, because you're new and you haven't been on here before. But if you are not new, you're not new. Thanks for coming back. I realize that we are up to 1,200 plus subscribers. We almost have 1,300 at this point. Again, thank you very much. I really appreciate the growth. We're trying to do a lot of things with the channel now that we're getting a little bit more of a viewership, and we're getting thousands of views for just about every video that we put out now every week. So I'll be trying to look at some merch, trying to get a store going with the website. But thank you for everybody for the support as we go forward in this process. Like I said earlier, the mug of the week is not different. It is still Life is Like a big box of chocolates, so you're just gonna have to deal with it, because I don't worry about these things. I just have nice beverages from nice mugs. Don't worry, I have more than 52 mugs, so you won't see a repeat for a good long while. But this time I just happen to have that still here with me. With me is my co-host, Dr. Ocelotopus. Dr. Ocelotopus this time is sporting the stop sign in his mouth, which is basically telling you to just shh. But don't listen to him. He's a jerk. And comment, feel free to do so. Feel free to continue to email us, defeatedbydeliciousfruitpies@gmail.com. You can always check us out on Twitter at DBDFP, and you can find us on Facebook at Defeated by Delicious Fruit Pies. The website is still down. We are working on that. We're still working on getting that transferred. You can seriously blame Will, though. But Will, I'm throwing you under the bus. It's Will's fault. So we're going to get that back up and running, and it'll be better than ever. It'll be fun. Don't worry, the Spider-Man 3 zone will be preserved. Things have been saved. That's one of the great treasures that we have saved. It's important to know what movies belong there. Speaking of that, we're going to go over some of that stuff. So
DBDFP double down.
Who came up with the idea for that movie? And then when somebody tells you, oh, there was this video game, and then they say a bunch of other undiscernible things, because you're just like, what? Video game movie? Well, if you have had that happen, then you're me, or like me. And so you just always kind of wonder, how did someone pitch this, and then it got funded, and then halfway through it, nobody said, trash, just no, throw it in the garbage, it's a dumpster fire. Nobody did that, and that's how we ended up with many wonderful movies. So we're going to go over some of those. My top favorite ones I will go over, and we're going to talk about why and how they're terrible. Some of these, honestly, I looked up and I'm like, no, that's not a thing. I don't remember that movie ever happening. So we'll get into that. But I just was by looking at, I mean, getting engrossed in and watching the Super Mario Brothers movie again, because, of course, it's so excellent. In 1993, there was a movie made based on the Super Mario Brothers video game. So in 1993, just to put this in context, by 1993, the only Mario games out were Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong, and maybe Super Mario 3. I gotta double check that, but I think that was in either 92 or 93. So you had a few of these games out. Although, no, you know what? In 92, 91, 92, Super Mario World came out because in the movie they had Yoshi, and there's no way they would have bothered with Yoshi unless the Super Nintendo came out. And Super Nintendo, I think, was like a 1990 thing. So scratch that. There were a few Mario games. The point is, this was not a good thing, and it didn't help the movie because as much as I love Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo, and Dennis Hopper, rip. Also rip for the movie. It's so bad. Like, don't watch. I don't want to recommend anything that gives somebody like a seizure. So, because I don't want to be responsible for that. I don't give out health advice, and I don't want to be considered a health expert. So, when I tell you to watch a movie and then you get epilepsy from it, it's not my fault. I'm saying it to you right now. I'm not an actual professional. I don't know what's going to happen to you. But if you did turn it back on, and it's free on YouTube right now, if you put in Super Mario Brothers movie, it's free. It's free dollars. It's too expensive. Because you're watching this and you're like, why? Like, why in the beginning, first of all, why claymation? Why is that the direction they went? It's already a video game movie, so what does that have to do with claymation? Second, they're going into the movie and they're just like, there's this epic storyline with a stone and a princess and a... Why? There's a princess, there's a plumber, there's some turtle guy, and there's like mushroom people that you gotta step on, except for the one guy that like always tells you that he's not the one that you're supposed to have rescued, which again, why do I keep rescuing you, Toad? Toad sucks, but except for Mario 2. I mean, if you look at Mario 2, Toad is the best. If you use Toad in Mario 2, he picks up all the different coins. You know, like you pick up the potion, you throw it on the ground, because basically it's Doki Doki Panic and it's not a Mario game. But anyway, you throw the potion on the ground, then you pick up all this stuff when it's like dun 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 dun, and you get all the coins, and then the coins give you the choices or the chances so that you can play the slot machine game. Which if you squint your eyes and you can look at it like just closely enough, you can actually get the cherry the first time every time, and most of the time the second cherry. And then if you get all 3 cherries, you get 5 up. But the third one's kind of a crapshoot. But you can at least get like a 1 or a 2 up, like no problem, and that's pretty sweet. He sucks in the movie too, and that's kind of a consistency. But other than Toad being terrible in both the movie and the game, a couple of names are the same. But it takes place in this weird pseudo Brooklyn city where they're actually really mean to the Bronx when they talk about it, and Manhattan. It seems like a very bigoted movie. And there are lizard people, which obviously is the reptilians. And so, David Icke, I'm sorry, you were right all along. If you don't get that reference and you're on YouTube, you haven't been on YouTube long enough. But anyway, the reptilians are here, and they're here to take over the planet, like, obviously. And there is a princess, Daisy, who's, you know, and I remember watching the movie and being like, why Princess Daisy? Because Super Mario Land had Princess Daisy, not Super Mario Brothers, and not Super Mario World. Those were Toadstool, Princess Toadstool, or Peach, as you don't find out for 3 more years is her first name. Which, why is her name Peach? I'll let the Japanese explain that one. This movie is really, really bad, and but it's entertaining and it's fun, but it's not any kind of adaptation of a video game. It's like, basically they stuck the Nike swoosh on something and were like, yeah, see, this is good for sports. Like, you know, if they like started making like Nike pizza, you're like, why is Nike making pizza? But brand recognition, so I guess I'll try it. Oh God, it tastes like Domino's. Like, it's kind of like that. You know, not anything particularly against Domino's, but why does their pizza shrink? When you let that stuff sit overnight and it shrinks, like a pizza this big gets this big if you wait long enough overnight. And you know why I know that? Because nobody wants to eat it, so it sits overnight and it shrinks. I don't know that about most other pizzas. You know why? Because everybody eats that pizza, just not Domino's. When they're like, get the door, it's Domino's, I feel like it's a hostage situation. Like, I'm not really sure what to do here, and I don't know what their demands are, but I'm scared. Much like if somebody told me, hey, Eric, we're going to go watch the Super Mario Brothers movie. So anyway, that's Super Mario Brothers movie. The next one that the Wikipedia, we'll talk about Wiki in a minute. The next one they talk about is Double Dragon. Double Dragon. Now, this was a sweet cartoon series, by the way. I don't know too much about the movie. Apparently, it was like a Japan release. But again, the cartoon was cool. I would imagine the Double Dragon movie is a lot like the Street Fighter movie, which, if you don't remember that, you're lucky. Street Fighter as a movie was, if you took Mortal Kombat and you had less of a budget and it was a little bit older, but it had a couple famous people in it, like Jean-Claude Van Damme, you would have Street Fighter. And while it's memorable, it's definitely memorable. And it's like, remember, it's a fighting game, so not the highest quality game. You know, it doesn't have like the greatest storyline. Like I just bought, and I don't know if you've watched previous episodes, I talk about how I got Final Fight 2 for the Super Nintendo. It's a really sick storyline, kind of like Double Dragon 2, where it's like, they took your girlfriend. Go beat up a bunch of people until you get her back. That's Street Fighter. So that's another one. I don't really have too many qualms with Street Fighter, but Mortal Kombat. So Mortal Kombat is near and dear to my heart, and I just want to say that. First of all, Mortal Kombat, the movie, I've laughed. I've never cried, but I've maybe cried laughing. I've laughed a lot with that movie, and I don't know if it was meant to be a comedy, but it is really, really funny. And I mentioned, in another episode recently about like, and how I had to issue an apology. Oh, by the way, I never published my apology video. It's a secret video. If you want to watch it, you're going to have to go on to my Subscribestar or my Patreon, and you're going to have to actually, pay to watch that, because it's a hostage situation. Get the door, it's Domino's. So, yeah, but I did apologize for making a mistake that it wasn't, I think I said it was Shao Kahn, but it was really Shang Tsung. Anyway, it wasn't Shao Kahn. And that movie was okay. Even the second one was kind of like, it was funny too. But they're all bad. The point is they're all bad. But Mortal Kombat games were really good. Like they were kind of that was the fighting game. For Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, like Mortal Kombat was the game. Killer Instinct was basically trying to be Mortal Kombat. This was before you had any kind of Tekken games that were also, I'm not a Tekken fan. Tim loves Tekken. Anyway, but Mortal Kombat was the standard at the time. But the movie was not the standard for how to make video game movies. This also had Wing Commander. Remember Wing Commander? I don't. It also had Lara Croft, Tomb Raider. So here's a game that, in the original games, they're really not good. Like, borderline terrible puzzles. And what do I remember? There was a video game magazine at the time that said it was protruding pounds of polygons, referring to Lara Croft's pixelated boobs. And it was like basically saying how the game was very shallow. It didn't really have a lot of depth to it, but because it was this female in shorts, how that makes anybody excited when it's literally polygons because it was N64 graphics, it was PS1, I don't know. But you need help. There's a hotline for you. I don't know what it is, but you can look it up. Just Google it. Google, I have a problem. I look at pixelated characters and get excited. Let me know the results. Ooh, don't let me know the results. Just get help. So, Tomb Raider was not so good. Resident Evil. So, there's a lot about Resident Evil that can be said here. The first Resident Evil movie is not actually terrible. But compared to the games, so you have Resident Evil, which was the horror game of the PlayStation 1. And then Resident Evil 2, which again redefined horror for an entire genre, for an entire console generation. This game, like Resident Evil 2, the remake, was so anticipated. It was the most anticipated remake for a horror game that I can remember. That I recall. And I follow a lot of horror genre stuff. And Resident Evil is just this phenomenal series that has so much storyline and so much depth. And they made the movie offensively simple. Like, really bad. And then they made Resident Evil, the sequel, and it was worse and worse and worse. And there's like 5 of these. And like one of them's okay. I think it was like Apocalypse or Annihilate. I don't know. The one where there's like the whole world goes into a desert. It's pretty sweet. It's actually a pretty cool movie. But again, it follows Alice. Alice doesn't exist. That's not a thing. I love Maya Jovovich as much as the next guy, but we didn't need that. She could have been Jill or Claire. Like, I mean, you could have just made her one of those other people. But the franchise is just so bad, and like, oh my gosh, it's the Wesker character in the movie. I think it was like the second to last movie. It's so bad. Like, I mean, it just reminds me of so I don't know if you guys remember Crackle. I don't know if you Crackle is one of those streaming apps. It was kind of like a Hulu, but it did really, really badly. But one of the things they had exclusively was a Dead Rising movie, which I think now you can watch online, I'm pretty sure. But Dead Rising was really, really campy and cheesy, but it was actually enjoyable. I actually enjoyed watching the movie. It was really funny. But just how goofy the effects were and the makeup was on the main character was what I think of when I think of Wesker. Except for they were trying to be totally serious with Wesker, which was not funny. It was just sad. He looked like a very sad, larger man, zipped up tightly in a Wesker suit. He was like in a big Egger suit. Oh, Men in Black reference. There's probably a bad Men in Black video game out there too. We'll get into that. So anyway, there's a lot of these kinds of movies. Doom being another one of the great ones. So Doom was not like, I mean, people loved Doom in the series Doom. I love the newest Doom movie, and I'm really looking forward to Doom Eternal. Or game, not movie. I think the game is going to be fantastic. I played the crap out of the 2016 Doom game. But when Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson played as the main guy in the Doom movies, but it was just like The Rock in a Doom setting, that wasn't okay. I mean, Doom guy always has the Halo helmet. And I always like wonder about like Halo, like how is Master Chief not Doom guy? And I've seen some weird theories, I've seen some weird fan theories, and you can always like write in about your weird fan theory about the Doom guy, because I've heard that he's like Link from Legend of Zelda is Doom guy, which I don't know why you needed to go there. I mean, I'm all for mixing universes. I mean, obviously, I'm totally down with like Lord of the Rings universe being the same as the Star Trek universe. We're cool. But Link as Doom guy? Why did we need to do that? When we have Halo guy, we have Master Chief and Doom guy. They're both Marines. They both have green bodysuits and helmets. I just don't know where you're at. I don't know where your head's at. But it probably needs a Doom guy helmet. So anyway, Blood Rain, terrible. Silent Hill. Silent Hill was not a horrible movie, but again, a great video game being turned into a mediocre movie. Oh, Extinction. Resident Evil Extinction. That was the one that was actually kind of good. Hitman the movie? No. No. Straight up no. Again, you could have done anything. And you could have done it very, very well, because Hitman is a straight storyline that you could have just made into a great movie, but you deviated so much that it just was terrible. And he talked too much. I mean, it would have actually been better directing if you figured out how to make the movie without him talking. That would have been awesome. Of course, they won't do that. In the Name of the King, a dungeon siege tale. Why was this even put on this list? Who watched In the Name of the King? Who are you? Who are you? I don't know who you are. Far Cry? Didn't see it. Max Payne? Nah, still didn't see it. But Max Payne was never my favorite. Street Fighter, The Legend of Chun-Li. What? Tekken, the movie. Yeah, did you see that? I didn't. Prince of Persia, Sands of Time. You know, I just watched Donnie Darko again recently, and I still have no desire to watch Prince of Persia. Because that's terrible. Why would you do that to him? Although The Day After Tomorrow was okay, but I think that's because Quaid was in it. Resident Evil Afterlife, Retribution, Silent Hill Revelation. Another one that was bad. Need for Speed. Yeah, there was Fast and Furious. Isn't that that's the movie based on the game, right? With Vin Diesel and that guy. That other guy. They had a Need for Speed. Wasn't there a Nicolas Cage Need for Speed movie? I think that was just another racing movie, but it had Nicolas Cage in it. Oh, I watched this other Nicolas Cage movie recently. It was so bad, but I'm not going to get into it because I can't. It's just my whole channel would be taken off if I described this movie. It was something else. Warcraft, the movie, that did very well. This says that Warcraft made $433 million worldwide. Bet most of that wasn't here. Assassin's Creed. December 21st of 2016, that movie came out. Made a whopping $240 million. Rampage. Again, why? Here's a terrible, terrible game. And by terrible, I don't mean that it was not fun. It was fun. It was an arcadey kind of game. You smash up buildings, you eat people. It's great. You're monsters. You know, like Godzilla kind of stuff. There's no plot. What is the plot? So again, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson comes in. He's like, I'll do a movie based on a video game. Woohoo! And the rest is history. Apparently the rest is a $428 million history. They're never getting a dime from me. I will watch that on YouTube when it's as free as the Super Mario Brothers movie, and not a minute sooner. Because as much as I think that it's great to see a giant gorilla thing with Dwayne Johnson running through jungles and buildings, I don't think that's even true. I don't think anything I just said is true. So here's an interesting fun fact. Pokemon Detective Pikachu is the only live-action film based on a video game that has received a fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes. The only one. Films based on video games have garnered a negative reputation for their poor execution and poor grasp at the source material of the game each film is based on. This is according to Wikipedia, which I trust about as much as I trust Rotten Tomatoes. Here's why. Here's why. We're going to go through the next list, which is video games based on movies. I want to point out a couple things here because it's very interesting to me. The first thing that's interesting to me is the movies that it actually has, because I think it's pretty impressive, some of the games that it has on here. But the second thing is the things that it doesn't have, which is really weird. So the Three Ninjas Kick Back is on there. Not the Three Ninjas. There was a movie called The Three Ninjas. There was a game for the Game Gear in that movie. There was a video game based on that movie that had the video game in it. Then there was a sequel, Three Ninjas Kick Back. This lists that video game and not the first one. So we're off to a great start, is what I'm saying, basically. Wikipedia is amazing. I mean, I want to go over a couple of things, because, by the way, this list is not exhaustive, but it's still over 500 entries long of movies that had video games made after them. I mean, it's just insane. But let's just take a stroll down the list, shall we? Addams Family Values is first, then the Addams Family video game, and it doesn't say the years for those. Then you have Alice in Wonderland, the 2000 video game. You have Alice in Wonderland, the 2010 video game. What you don't have is American McGee's Alice or Alice Madness Returns. Now, you might be saying, well, Eric, that's because the Alice in Wonderland movies didn't come out until after 2000. Aha! That's what you think, but there were really low-quality Alice in Wonderland movies made before that. Might I remind you that there was this certain company, let's say, start with a D. They make lots of cartoons. They had a pretty big movie based on Alice in Wonderland. What was it called? Oh, Alice in Wonderland that Disney put out. That did have American McGee's Alice character that looked basically like that Alice. So it was based on that Alice in Wonderland. This list is terrible. And we're in A, okay? This is A. They have Alien, 1984 video game, Alien 3 video game, and Alien 3: The Gun. But not Aliens. And not Alien versus Predator that I can see. Nope, no Alien versus Predator. They have Alien Trilogy, like that's a thing, except for they didn't want to put Aliens until later on. They go Aliens, Alien 2, which is not Aliens. Aliens, the computer game, 1986 video game. Aliens, the computer game, 1987 video game. Right. Anyway, Alvin and the Chipmunks is on there. The Amazing Spider-Man, 2012 video game. And The Amazing Spider-Man 2, 2014 video game. But it doesn't have the newest Spider-Man game, which is apparently the best one. I mean, I haven't played it. But I'm just going to throw it out there that The Amazing Spider-Man, not that good. The new Spider-Man, that good. So, again, This list is... Nah. It's just trash. So it has Angry Birds Rio as one of the video games based on a movie. An adaptation for Angry Birds that has the characters from the movie Rio. Do you remember Rio? 98% of you don't. It's okay. It was just a stupid bird movie. Arachnophobia is on there, though. That's cool. But it has Back to the Future, list of Back to the Future video games, Back to the Future 2 video game, not Back to the Future 3. And not the Back to the Future Telltale game, which was really good. And this is not a new page. Can we talk about Wikipedia for a minute? I was told by one of the lovely members of the DBDFP crew that maybe I'm being too hard on Wikipedia and asking too much of them. But I don't really ask for much, just that it acts like an encyclopedia. It's not like I'm sending them regular quarterly emails saying, we can't survive without your donations and we don't do advertisers and that's why we... it's not like that. I'm not asking for stuff like that. Who would do that? Who would do that, Wikipedia? So if Defeated by Delicious Fruit Pies doesn't get donations and you don't subscribe to us on Patreon or Subscribestar, we're going to keep creating content, just FYI, and we won't even ask for your yearly contribution of $50. Right, Wikipedia? But I asked too much of you, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I asked for you to put Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 on your list of video games based on movies. Anyway, let's keep going. There's Batman, Batman and Robin, Batman Forever. There's even Battleship, the 2012 video game. They even have the Beetlejuice, and it says video game, but obviously we all know it's the NES game. And here's what's interesting. They show computer games on this list, but they don't show the computer game of Beetlejuice, which I actually liked better than the Nintendo game of Beetlejuice. So the video game of Beetlejuice on the computer was awesome. You walked around using the keyboard keys and you used spacebar to do your shot. And you had to do a couple things. So you had to eliminate the enemies on the board, and the board was like a chessboard. And you had Lydia walking around, and you had these the characters that are basically in the Nintendo game too, mostly from the cartoon. I don't know if you know this. If you don't know this, you're welcome. There was a Beetlejuice cartoon, and it was very funny, and it was well drawn, and it was a decent cartoon. So this was based more on that. And so the best weapon, obviously, was when you could take your own head off and it goes across the board completely and comes back. So you could double hit enemies, and that was really useful. But you just walk around and you'd take out all the enemies on the board. You'd have to avoid them because they could hit you or whatever. Some shot things, some didn't. So you had to make sure that you shot when they were walking and not get hit by them. So it was just the whole thing. But that's not on this list. It's not on this list. RoboCop is not on this list. RoboCop. It's clearly based on the movie. Look at this. Is Murphy from the movie. This is not from the comic book. This is clearly from the movie. It's a great movie. RoboCop's a great movie. Does this look like Bob Hoskins to you? Just FYI, I just want to throw that out there. Does this look like Bob Hoskins? I didn't think so. This doesn't look anything like him. He's a redhead. Mario's a redhead. At least when he has firepower. Anyway, Big Trouble in Little China's on here. Blade and Blade 2 are on here. Blade Runner's on here. You have Bram Stoker's Dracula. But you get into some of these other games, and it has the third of these. It even has Constantine. I can't. It has Demolition Man, the video game. Now, what's funny about the Demolition Man video game, if you have the DVD of Demolition Man or the VHS, it actually advertises the video game in the before scenes. You have to rewind all the way back to the beginning. Well, okay, so the VHS is a thing where you had to rewind it all the way back to the beginning because it was what we call physical medium. It wasn't digital. So you had to actually physically rewind the tape. It gets to the beginning, and then you have to watch all these stupid previews and things before you could start the movie. So Demolition Man on VHS, which I have, it advertises this really bad-looking video game. The movie's amazing, so the video game, not so much. Dino City, the game. What movie? What Dino City movie? I don't know. Dirty Harry, the 1990 video game. I'm sure that's a Peach, not Princess Peach. We have Dragonheart, which was an awful game. And, you know, I mean, let's be real about the movie. It wasn't fantastic, but it did have Sean Connery as the dragon. And a dragon Sean Connery back in the day was, you know, we took what we could get. That was some cool stuff. You know, it wasn't Liam Neeson getting stabbed with a light blade, but, you know, it was pretty cool. Enchanted, Eragon, the video game. Yeah, so we have all these. Fantasia, the video game. If you're looking at a game and you're like, well, I know, we'll make this game based on a movie that is just a cartoon rendition of music. And the game is not a music game. That's Fantasia. You can rent it now at your local video store. Then we get to Fight Club. Now, I had to look up Fight Club because I never played Fight Club, a video game. Because here's the thing. Define irony. Making a video game to capitalize on a movie that makes fun of the materialistic world of possessions and capitalizing on everything. So who are you selling this video game to? Like, I was looking at that. I'm like, I have to look this up because I have no idea who the heck this is even selling this to. Like, I am Jack's great sense of irony. Anyway, in the game, it's just the fighting. It's a fighting game. It's like a crappy Tekken. Look this up on YouTube. I might put a link in the description. I might not. It depends on how good you are. But look at Bob in the video. It's so unfortunate. Everybody's so unfortunate. Only Irvin looks the same as he does in the movie. Everybody else just looks really upsetting. I mean, I know that it was for like PS2, and I think original Xbox, not even Xbox One. But still, there's no excuse. There's just no excuse for this. It is so bad. The Fight Club game really was just a crappy version of Tekken, or like a Soul Calibur game that had no soul and was very low caliber. So anyway, that's the Fight Club game. This was just really cringy. Then we're only in F right now. I skipped a little bit, I know, I'm not sorry, but so you have all these games like Godfather. It did have GoldenEye 007, thank God, because that is actually one of the best games for the N64. And it's not, I would never argue that GoldenEye was one of the best James Bond movies. But, I mean, Boris was awesome. But it was not the best James Bond movie. And, in fact, was one of the best N64 games. Without that mediocre movie, we would not have had hundreds of hours of fun shooting each other on couch co-op and competition, looking at each other's screens going, I know where you are. And living off of body armor and karate chopping people to death with Odd Job. I mean, like, you wouldn't have any of these gems had it not been for GoldenEye. So, thank you, GoldenEye. There was a Grease video game. Did you know that? I didn't know that. I still don't know that. There's a Halloween video game, although it doesn't say when it was made, so I don't know if that's even really true. It's just the thing. How to Train Your Dragon video game. That was as good as the movie? Question mark. There's a Hudson Hawk video game, which you can argue both sides of this because some people argue that Hudson Hawk was a really funny movie, and some people argue that it's on the same level as Bruce Willis's musical career. And yes, Bruce Willis has a CD. Yeah, he has a CD. You can look it up. I'd say you're welcome, but I'm not sure you're going to thank me. But there's a Hudson Hawk one. Hulk video game. Just Hulk. Not the Hulk. Not a year. Not a system. Hulk video game. Awesome. The Hunt for the Red October, the 1990 video game, that was actually okay, and the movie was fantastic. So that's one of the good ones, where the movie and the video game were on par. You had John Wick Hex. Remember that one? Me neither. When did this come out? What is this system? Who has John Wick Hex? I mean, isn't it just like Keanu Reeves just killing everybody. What's the video game? You're in God mode the whole time? Like, do you have to like put in cheat codes to not make him invincible? How do you make a John Wick game? He just wins, no matter what. Plus, like, I don't want to see the beginning intro scene because that dog was really cute. Judge Dredd, the 1995 video game. Stallone had some video games, right? Like, that was pretty cool for him, and just not the rest of us. Now, here's an interesting one. Jurassic Park Builder, Jurassic Park 3, the arcade game, Jurassic Park 3, Danger Zone, Danger Zone, Jurassic Park 3 Dino Defender, Jurassic Park 3 Island Attack, Jurassic Park 3 Park Builder, Jurassic Park 3 The DNA Factor, Jurassic Park Interactive, and Jurassic World Evolution. No Jurassic Park for the Sega Genesis, or the Game Boy, or the NES, or the Super NES, and no Jurassic Park 2 for the Super Nintendo. How is this a comprehensive list? I do not feel like I'm looking at an encyclopedia of video game movies. Wikipedia. Karate Kid's on there. Kung Fu Panda is on there. Played that game. That's trash. Labyrinth, the computer game. So this is, again, you have this computer game. Why not other computer games? Also, Dungeons and Dragons was not on here. And there was definitely a Dungeons and Dragons movie. I'm Damodar. Remember, I mean, if you haven't seen that movie, I can recommend that. And I don't care if it hurts your health. It's totally worth watching the Dungeons and Dragons movie. It's really funny. The Last Airbender. Ooh, there's a bad movie. So even if the game is bad, it just, that matches the source material. Lego The Hobbit video game. Not Let Go of the Hobbit. Lego, like Lego people, The Hobbit. Like they had Lord of the Rings games, but Lego. Lego Jurassic World, Lego Marvel's Avengers, Lego Movie 2 video game, no Lego Batman.
DBDFP
There was
double down,
actually a Lego
down,
Batman
down,
movie.
Down, down.
No Lego Batman game listed, even though there is definitely a Lego Batman game. Cool. But anyway, that's pretty bad too. Stargate for the Super Nintendo, that's a really fun video game, and it's a really good movie. There you go. But it was based on that movie, and it was actually pretty good. And Stargate had a lot of really great source material too that I think they used very well with Stargate SG-1 and a bunch of the other Stargate series like Atlantis. So I'm not really upset about that, and I think the video game really does it justice. So that's actually pretty good. I feel good about that. It's like warm and fuzzy inside. Like, oh wait, no, I'm just thirsty. Okay. Ah, that's better. No more warm and fuzzy. Just fuzzy. I must have touched fuzzy and got dizzy. So you also have all these Lord of the Rings games, which the Lord of the Rings games were actually pretty good for the most part. The ones that were for PlayStation were pretty cool. The RPG style games. I remember those when the Lord of the Rings movies were out. Those were pretty decent. And you know, if you played Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, which guess what, are not on the list. Those are very good games. I mean, they're really, really good games. And while they're not directly based on the Lord of the Rings movies or The Hobbit, they are definitely in the same environment and feel the same and have the same animations and things for like a cave troll looks the same in the game as it is in the movies. So they actually did a really good job there. I thought that was like a really fun video game based on movies. Mad Max, The Mask, you played that. I know you did. There's at least 3 of you on here that I know have definitely watched that. And then played that. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, the video game. Here's the weird thing about the Power Rangers video games. They were really good. Like, imagine Turtles in Time, but with, like, the Megazord. So, like, not only did you get to fight using these stupid ninja moves, like a Final Fight, kind of like side-scrolling, beat-em-up game, but you also got to fight with a giant, like, robot thing, like Godzilla style, against a giant monster. They were really fun. The Super Nintendo Power Rangers games were really, really fun. And, you know, if it's Power Rangers, this is not a good movie. This is not a good series, but this is a really good video game. So, you know, this is why we have to rate this. And I'm going to need help from everybody too. And you'll have to comment later and we'll talk about this in a minute. Monty Python and the Quest for the Holy Grail. How was that a game? When did I miss this game? Monty Python's Cow Tossing? What movie is that based on? Monty Python's The Meaning of Life video game. What? There's these games out there. Doesn't tell me what system. Doesn't tell me what you're doing. Nothing about it. Just thanks, Wikipedia. So informative. The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. Not The Mummy 1. Not The Mummy Returns. Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. Yay! So anyway, we're like at M here, okay? Like, and this is such an exhaustive list. I'm already exhausted. But it does have Willow. Willow's really good. It has Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on here. And if you want to know all of the different things on the list, just go to the Wikipedia and you can look up movies that were turned into video games or video games were turned into movies. And that leads me to this last thing that I'm going to go over, and then we'll go over the rating system and how we're going to deal with this problem, because it is a problem. It's a problem that we all have. It's a burden that we all shoulder together. There is another category in Wikipedia, video games based on films based on video games. This category consists of video games which were adapted from a film whose adaptation in turn came from an original video game. There are 3. Number 1. Double Dragon for the Neo Geo, that system, the one that all 3 of you have. R. Ratchet and Clank, the 2016 video game, because of the Ratchet and Clank movie, because of the Ratchet and Clank game. And then S. Street Fighter, the movie, the arcade game. I'm not kidding. It's Street Fighter : the movie, and it was an arcade game that was made based off of the movie Street Fighter, based off of Street Fighter. I mean, what is going on here? Now, fortunately, they never made a Resident Evil based off of the Alice character, which was based off of the movies, which was based off of Resident Evil. It doesn't mean they won't. Maybe they'll do Resident Evil, Alice, Madness Returns, 98, The Reckoning, Neo, Genesis 3. And never make a prequel to those 2 movies. Maybe. And maybe they'll make games about those too. The point is, everything's awful. This is just the worst stuff that you can find. I'm not sure why this happens. I don't really get why video games are turned into movies for the most part, because video games are just really good movies where you actually get to play the main character. And I'm not really sure how they keep making these video games off of movies, because some of these, like I have Jaws, right, for the NES. I don't know if you're familiar with Jaws. You're familiar with the movie Jaws, right? God, I hope that's true. If that's not true, just click the X out of here. But yeah, so if you've seen Jaws, there's an NES game which is about what you would expect. You're in a boat. You're on a boat. You're on a boat, and then there's Jaws, which is coming after you, trying to eat you and kill you, and you have to like hit it at just the right time as it's coming for you, and you also have to go under and scuba dive. So it has these like little missions and things. But I mean, essentially, it's nothing like the movie, because you can win, and you know, Jaws is just in all kinds of different scenarios. It's just not. How do you make a game that is based off of a very linear series of events? Like, so on the Atari, there's Super Empire Strikes Back. It's a game where you're just in like I don't know what it is. It might be an A-wing, it might be an X-wing, and you're shooting AT-ATs as they slowly crawl towards the front. There's a map, and sometimes you become invincible. There's weak spots on these things, but you have to basically shoot them over and over and over and over again without them shooting you to death and shooting you down. And you have to destroy these AT-ATs in an infinite loop to get a high score because Atari. But I mean, yeah, that makes sense. It's the battle on Hoth, but it just, you didn't need any more of a plot point than that. The other game that this list on Wikipedia does not mention, by the way, is E.T., the extraterrestrial. It's rated as one of the worst, if not the worst game ever made. And E.T. is rated as a really, really highly critically acclaimed movie. So this is what leads us to our dilemma. What is worse? Video games that are made based on movies, or movies that are made based on video games? Now, if you ask me from the Fight Club perspective, they're both awful, because they're both trying to capitalize on one form of media into another form of media. So I struggled with this, but I wanted to really come up with something that made sense. We have to categorize like different areas that would make it terrible and why it's terrible, and then see in which category each one wins. So here are the categories that I propose. And again, feel free to throw in the comments if you have a different category that you want to put in here. But My one category is the worst, like the absolute worst, either video game or movie that is based on a movie or video game. That one that wins between the two. So in other words, if E.T. is worse than the like Lord of the Rings movie or game, like that's what you compare, like how bad the Jurassic Park video game was versus how bad like any of the like Wing Commander. Like let me just go over one of these, like the Super Mario Brothers movie. Oh, House of the Dead. How House of the Dead was made into a movie. Please don't watch the House of the Dead movie because it's really, I think it's like a 15-minute long movie, and they have these scenes where like it's the same exact shot of the same exact gun going off, but from like 6 different angles in slow motion, but it does it in sequence of every angle of the same gun over and over, and they try to mix it in with like other scenes of zombies getting shot by other guns. And it's so cringy. It makes like literally like a 30-second scene last for like 5.5, 6 minutes. Just don't. Do yourself a favor. So like one of the categories then is this horrible movie based on the video game House of the Dead worse than E.T., which is rated one of the worst games of all time based on E.T. the movie? So that's category 1. Category 2, just the sheer volume of terrible things that have been produced. So this means like more bad than good or more good than bad too. It really is important because you're comparing, like I have probably 2 pages of video games that were turned into movies. I have 500 entries of video games that were turned into movies, or movies that were turned into video games, and it's not even exhaustive. So, it can't just be like the sheer volume, but how much more, like how much longer in terms of hours have we all suffered from video games that were turned into movies versus movies that were turned into video games? So we got to take that into account too. The next category is more good than bad or more bad than good. So in other words, like, are there more bad video games based on movies than there are good ones? And are there more bad movies or video games based on movies, like vice versa? So the point is it better or worse in the sense that there might be like a Super Mario Brothers movie, there might be a House of the Dead movie, there might be a Resident Evil 3 movie, but there might be a GoldenEye game, and then there might be like, a Willow game, and there might be like, so we got to really look at like different games versus movies. Like, was the Max Payne movie so bad? Probably not. Was the Dead Rising game movie good? Yeah, I think the Dead Rising, it was, about what I would expect. Was the Silent Hill movie terrible? No. So we got to look at like, is there more good than bad? Because, and this is where it might be the reverse of the other. In other words, it might turn out to be that there are many more bad movies that were turned into video games than good ones, but it might also be that just in terms of ratio, there are many more bad video games that were turned into movies than good video games turned into movies. So we have to look at all these categories. We'll give each one like a 10 points, and we'll see how they stack up. So category 1, let's start out with the worst of the worst. So what's the worst movie that is based on a video game? And, for that, I do have to look at some of these, because some of these are, like, Mortal Kombat's not the worst movie, for sure. House of the Dead's really up there. Like, it's really bad. The later Resident Evil movies are also really, really bad. The Postal movie's pretty bad. Let's see. Silent Hill's pretty good. Rampage I can't speak to. And Pokemon Detective Pikachu did get a fresh rating from Rotten Tomatoes. I don't know if that's before or after they started deleting people's negative reviews, but it did get a positive review, which is the only one to do that on Rotten Tomatoes. So there is that. That's something to keep in mind. Now, if you look at bad video games based on movies, like E.T. is probably like what you would consider to be your gold standard. It has no way to know what you're doing. He's really hard to control. It is a single button and joystick game. There are random items you collect, and we're not really sure why you're collecting them. So I'm not really sure. Like that's pretty bad. And Jaws was a pretty bad video game, I gotta say. But are they worse than the House of the Dead movie bad? I don't know. I mean, you got Beetlejuice, you got Batman here. I mean, there are a lot of good, and a lot of the Disney games actually, based on Disney movies, were pretty darn good. Got to admit, the Little Mermaid video game for the NES, it's pretty good. Aladdin and the Lion King for the Sega Genesis were awesome. They were just really well put together games. So there's a lot of movies that made really good games, and I don't know that there's a game that's really, I mean, there's the Ghost Rider video game, but then again, Ghost Rider the movie was way worse. Like, I think the game was actually more playable than the movie was watchable. And some would argue the same for Hudson Hawk. The Jurassic Park games are really good. Spider-Man, I mean, Spider-Man 3 Zone, that's a thing, but the video games were always fun. Top Gun was really fun. Westworld Willow was a great game. Young Sherlock, I mean, I don't know anything about Young Sherlock, but I know that Sherlock Holmes was a great movie, but it was also a great game. So it just seems that I liked Ghost Rider. Get out. There's no way you like Ghost Rider. That's not a thing. You can't say you like Ghost Rider. With Nicolas Cage, no way. I love Nicolas Cage. Ghost Rider was horrible. It was so bad. And I watched both of them, and I don't know why I did. But yeah, no on Ghost Rider, I'm going to have to say. But in terms of what the worst video game is, which I do think it probably is E.T. versus the worst movie, which is probably House of the Dead, if I had to pick which one would make my eyes bleed first, I'm still probably going with House of the Dead. That movie is so awful, and there's no payoff. There's never a time where you feel like this was worth watching. Whereas E.T., I can at least have fun making fun of it. I couldn't even make fun of watching House of the Dead. We were sitting there at Brad's house watching this movie going, oh my God, why are they still doing this to us? Like, it was like torture. Like, I may get a confession out of someone by having them watch this movie. Whereas E.T. is stupid, but ultimately it's pretty funny how stupid it is. And it is an Atari game, so you got to give it a little bit of credit. I mean, everybody's favorite Atari games still suck. I was playing Asteroids this weekend in Brooklyn, and it was like, this game is really hard and dumb to control. Plus, like, everything was in German. I don't know why that was. Like, why is Asteroids in German? Maybe it was just the arcade. I don't know. The point is, I'm going to award the 10 points of being the worst to House of the Dead. So movies that are based on video games so far have 10 points. So it's 10-0. The next one, sheer volume of damage that it's done to the world. Now, you could argue that with 500 plus entries of video games that are based on movies, there's a lot of filth in here. There's a lot of dumpster fires. And while that may be keeping us all warm at night, you have to remember, video games based on bad movies can still end up being good video games. Like Batman games, Spider-Man games. But remember, video games based on bad movies have never been good. Like the movies have never been good. So like, let's take just again Super Mario Brothers. I've played that game a million times. The movie, horrible. Double Dragon, can't even imagine. Street Fighter, I like it for the wrong reasons. It's terrible. Mortal Kombat, okay, it's okay. Tomb Raider movie, wow, really? Lots of the Resident Evil movies, really, really bad. Doom, horrible. Silent Hill, sequel, ugh. DOA, Dead or Alive, really? Hitman, so bad. So bad. In the Name of the King was really painful. Tekken, I can't even imagine watching that as a movie. That's just not a thing. Prince of Persia, again, I made fun of that already. See previously in this episode. Need for Speed, why? Assassin's Creed, didn't do it right. Tomb Raider, again. Rampage, seriously. And Pokemon Detective Pikachu, the only thing I will say about that movie is Sonic the Hedgehog, the movie. That was supposed to come out this year. You know why it didn't? Because it was so bad looking that from the trailer they delayed the movie. That's how you know video games turned into movies is a bad idea. So even though there's a smaller body of work, if you look at total hours of suffering, I think that the Alice games, the the Alien games, the Ninja Turtles games are fantastic. The Golden Eyes out there. There are hundreds and hundreds of enjoyable hours out there of video games, even to be played based on, movies that suck. But, all of that doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, I've suffered more at the hands of bad movies based on video games than video games based on movies. And since I'm in charge here of the numbers, I give it a 10. So now it has 20 points. It's going to be really hard to tie that up. So we'll go with the next one. The next category is more bad or more good. Are there more bad games out there than good ones based on movies? And are there more bad movies than bad games based on video games? Or more good than bad based on video games? I would say, just on the list that I have, which is the one I'm going off of, there are many more bad video games on that list than good ones. I've listed all my favorite ones, like RoboCop is really good. That is a great game. But then again, there are so many Harry Potter games out there, and every single one of them is terrible. And a lot of the Lord of the Rings games are bad. And honestly, every Lego game's the same. And I'm sorry, 3-year-olds watching this video, but first of all, your parents are awful people. And second, just for having you watch this, I don't know why you're watching this. And also, they're all the same. All the Lego games are the same. Break this, build this. You have more Legos, more characters. Did I just summarize every single game that's made with? I did. You don't have to answer that question. Whereas the movies, there are some bad movies out there. But number one, I enjoy Mortal Kombat. I enjoyed Street Fighter. Yes, I enjoyed the Mario Brothers movie, even though it's bad. Yeah, no, I see really bad movie Mario Brothers. I know, but I also enjoy bad movies. So I'm going to give that one to the video games, gets the 10 points. So now we're up 20 to 10. And that pretty much brings us to my conclusion. My conclusion about this, it is worse for us to make movies based on video games with a hope that anything good will come from it than it is for us to make video games based on movies and hope the same. The real lesson here is whenever you have Nicolas Cage playing Ghost Rider, whether it's the video game or the movie, we all lose. And I think that's an important lesson for us all to have. I hope you enjoyed this one. I really wanted to go over these differences. It was kind of just something I was toying around with. If you did enjoy this and you wanted to learn more about video games that are terrible or movies that are terrible based on these things, please feel free, write us defeatedbydeliciousfruitpies@gmail.com. Your comments and suggestions are always welcome. I had some really funny comments out here for some of these videos, and I don't know why you guys are deleting them, but they're really funny. I love the criticism and the compliments, but please send your submissions for any suggestions you have for ideas for future episodes. If you want, again, you could be on the show. It's fine. I mean, I'm trying to work it out with about 5 of you to be on the show, and that's great. I'm really excited about that. But anybody can join on the show. You just have to have a working microphone, camera, and internet connection. The internet connection is kind of important. It really doesn't work out well if you don't. And I really do need to be able to see you, or I'm going to make a really funny graphic for your face. So you don't want that. But again, defeatedbydeliciousfruitpies@gmail.com for all inquiries and questions. We've kind of gone over with all this stuff because I'm really into the analytics of this. But I'll answer some more of your questions next time. I may, in fact, have to make a mailbag because I'm getting too many comments and questions to put out in one week. Or I could just put it behind that Patreon wall, and you'll have to pay like a whole $1 a month to watch this stuff, including my apology video. Otherwise, you'll never know that I'm sorry, because I'm not. All right, everybody. It's been great. Thank you all. I'll see you next week, and keep on keeping on some of your suggestions. And don't talk crap about Helen Keller. See ya.
Defeated.